What's good, fellow outcasts and other rejects? Welcome to WTC, the Anime Outcast. First off, if you're new here, we upload anime what-ifs based around My Hero and other shows alike. Secondly, did you know 80% of our audience isn't subscribed? So in order for us to continue to make good content, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Now without further ado, let's get into the video. When we last left off, Izuku had just learned of All Might's injury and deflated form. Yeah, fighting that thing whittled my time limit down to about an hour and a half. Kinda reminds me of your watch's time limit. All Might jokes while taking a sip of his tea, scolding the roof of his mouth. But Izuku just stays quiet, still trying to digest everything. So, what now, Mr. Toshinori? He questions, looking at All Might for advice on what to do with the Omnitrix. Though he's not given the answer he expected. Well, the sports festival is coming up, isn't it? Get out there and make a name for yourself. Show the world you aren't to be messed with. All Might cheerfully replies, telling him to relax as well. This makes Izuku even more agitated, asking what could happen if more people came after him, or he got more people in the crossfire, or another USJ incident happened. But the number one hero just shrugs and explains that he's got the whole police force looking into this. Plus, he's now got the badge if anything gets dicey. With Izuku's mind somewhat eased, the conversation takes a light turn, with the two discussing his plans for the sports festival. We won't be going into that conversation right now as to not spoil the event. Instead, we'll briefly be covering the class prep work. For the first few days, Izuku would hit a roadblock in his training due to not knowing how to physically improve his forms. To be honest, he wasn't even sure if he could. But after watching his classmates' training regimens and exercises, Izuku realized he's at a physical advantage with his aliens already, but lacking in skill and experience compared to the rest. His training on the beach was merely just to get a grip with his new powers. It really didn't give him the combat and practical experience he needed. So from here, he starts asking the other students for sparring sessions and other combat exercises. Most oblige this request, such as Ida and Bakugo, but some like Todoroki and Momo refuse in order to keep secrecy. With that out of the way, we can now move on to the much anticipated day. The 1A waiting room is filled with lifeful enthusiasm as the class talk amongst themselves. Izuku sits next to Bakugo and Uraraka, the two listening to Bakugo ramble about himself. Deku loses interest in the conversation, however, as he starts frantically dialing through his heroes. Somewhat alarmed, the other boy presses the matter since it reminds him of what happened in the USJ. No, it's nothing. It's just... The Omnitrix wielder tries to explain before suddenly cutting himself off. For a second, only one of my guys was popping up for me. But hey, I'm sure it's fine now, Izuku mutters, trying to play it off as nothing. Then, as he looks back at his friends, something, or rather someone, catches his attention. It's Todoroki. He's sitting alone in a slumped position with his back to everyone. Deku knows he's not the most talkative person, but he wouldn't shy away from voicing his opinion in a time like this. While it doesn't sit right with him, he moves past it to continue hyping his friends up for the festival. The opening ceremony goes a lot like in canon, with most eyes on our main class, many being of anger from the other classes, but the main difference comes in the form of the student's speech. As Izuku got the highest score in the entrance exam, he would be given the chance to talk instead of Bakugo. Since he's still a relatively nervous wreck, he ends up botching it and giving a half-assed inspirational speech. Going to the first proper event, the race around the stadium starts with the students trying to force their way through the narrowed corridor. With no other entry point, Izuku charges into the crowd while dialing up a hero. Ice then cascades against the ground, trapping most in place. This gives its creator, Todoroki, the perfect opportunity to take a quick lead. As it's still early in the game, Izuku is hesitant to transform straight away because he has no idea how long the game will last. But with him being one of the trapped students, he doesn't have the privilege to save it. A green flash then fills the hallway, blinding the surrounding students. Going outside with Todoroki, he presses forward while carving a straight path for himself with ice. Then, he's met by his first proper obstacle, a horde of zero-pointer robots from the entrance exam. One of the war machines stares down at the boy, who in turn raises his hand, ready to barrage it with ice. But a loud roar reverberates from far behind him, somehow coming all the way from the small passage. Distracted from the noise, Todoroki abruptly looks behind him and sees a red giant bounce into the air and over him. The red creature cocks his fist back to promptly smash it into the robot's head, bringing it to the ground. Todoroki freezes at the sight of Izuku in his extra might form, seeing a specific red, white, and blue hero in his place. Once on the ground, Extra Might looks back at him, a cocksure grin adorning his face. This sparks a revelation within the other boy while creating a new conviction for him. An angry Todoroki then sends a massive wave of ice forward, as if something possessed him at that moment. The resulting attack is narrowly dodged by Deku, but traps a few zero-pointers in the glacier.
What, can't you wait till the fighting tournament to start fights you can't win?
He snarls at Todoroki, cracking all four of his knuckles in expectation of a fight. Sadly, they wouldn't get a chance to clash as the rest of the contestants started to catch up, like Bakugo blasting ahead, for example. No other option, Izuku takes to the air again to continue on. As Extra Might, he gets pretty far before timing out, managing to make it to the final running stretch. Though this does put him at a massive disadvantage, knocking him down a fair few places. This gives Bakugo the top spot instead of second place. Moving quickly on to the Cavalry Battle, we have a lot to discuss. Since Bakugo is in the hot seat with the 10 million point headband, this immediately removes him from his canon team. But even with that, Izuku still offers to form a team with him. As he goes to makes the proposition, Bakugo just stares blankly.
Who the hell is she?
The spiky-haired boy mutters out in confusion while pointing at the Omnitrix. Izuku has no idea what his friend is on about, but looks at the watch nonetheless. A horrid shriek is then let out by the changeling, seeing a scruffy pink-haired girl touching the Omnitrix. She promptly pushes away from him while introducing herself as Mai Hatsume. Then, she boldly demands to get a better look at the watch and to join their team. Both Bakugo and Izuku hit her with an empathetic no, the former telling her to get lost. With that brief yet odd encounter out of the way, the pair go to team crafting. They assemble a pretty similar team to canon, getting both Uraraka and Tokoyami on board. The team's formation would be pretty different from canon, however. Bakugo takes the role of rider, with Izuku becoming the front, but Uraraka keeps her role on the left back wing, with Tokoyama taking the right. Going on to the actual game, it starts the same as the other version. Most teams make a beeline straight for the 10 million point headband. With an alien already dialed up, Izuku transforms straight away within the match beginning 10 minutes. He'd be able to stay in alien form for the full duration without a worry. But there is one unforeseen problem: a mistransformation. As Deku is quickly covered by a flash, he comes out to his ghost hero, Hibiki.
That isn't the creature in which you spoke of earlier, Midoriya. Is this a new plan I'm unaware of?
Tokoyami exclaims, concerned if the new form could mess up their plan.
No, this is fine. I know I said kudzu, but this can work. Now Uraraka doesn't have to lift me.
Izuku mutters back with faked confidence in his voice, his tracked eye moving to look at Tokoyami. If you recall earlier, Deku mentioned only one transformation was appearing on the watch. The one alien just happens to be Hibiki. An alarming coincidence. Proceeding with the game, a few black and white tendrils start poking out of Izuku's protective husk. They promptly lash out at the opposing team, snatching their headbands and scattering them among the field to cause a distraction. Then, to the dismay of Bakugo, the team starts their escape plan. Like their canon strategy, Uraraka uses her gravity powers to make her teammates weightless so Bakugo could rocket them into the air. Since Mineta was expelled on their first day, he isn't there to stop them, not that he could anyway. But the team only stays in the air for a few minutes to give both Bakugo and Uraraka a break before repeating. Throughout the match, Izuku catches glimpses of Todoroki giving them dirty looks. But it isn't like he could hit them from up there, it's against the rules to actually trap them in ice. The match continues without any major problems for the team, allowing them to keep their points and guaranteeing their spots in the next round. Once the game is appropriately over, Izuku is pulled aside by Todoroki and brought to a large doorway during their break. Tension builds between the two as they stand in silence.
Look, Midoriya, I have a favor to ask.
Todoroki sheepishly mutters, not even looking the other boy in the eyes, but at least breaking the quietness. Yeah? What is it? Izuku hesitantly asks, thinking in the back of his mind that he will regret this later. But it takes a minute for Todoroki to answer, as if he's struggling to pick the right words.
That, forearm transformation of yours. You modeled it off All Might, correct?
He finally responds, confusing his classmate. Shaking his head, Izuku tells Todoroki to get to the point as he's struggling to follow. I have one simple request. If we're to face each other in the fighting tournament, use that form against me. I have a point to prove, and I can't do it without it. Todoroki explains, cutting straight to the point. This leads to the standard reveal of his past and how he wants to spite his father. He also talks about his thought process on this, thinking that if he can beat Izuku's extra might form, it could show his dad that he didn't need his flames to surpass All Might. Bewildered, Deku just stares back, wide-eyed at the scared boy, seeing the weight on his shoulders no one else could. And what if I don't? He mutters, trying to be more assertive. This doesn't sit well with the son of Endeavor, giving him an ultimatum. Either he uses extra might, or he'll give him an excruciating, painful, and embarrassing defeat. And with that, he goes to walk off. Wait, you're right. I did base parts of extra might off All Might. That's painfully obvious. But empty threats aren't going to get you anywhere with me, Izuku calls out, freezing Todoroki in place. I want to be just like him. He inspires me to try my hardest, just like how everyone else is. Everyone is giving their all, and yet you purposely limiting yourself? For what? Some petty revenge? Look at yourself, for God's sake, he pleads, genuinely wanting to help his classmate. But his speech doesn't get through to Todoroki, who walks off, leaving, Izuku standing there on his own. From here, many things go about the same. The remaining students are briefed on the fighting tournament, with Ojiro and Shota giving away their spots. Shota being the kid from 1B, Izuku still has a small encounter with Shinzo before being pulled away by Ojiro, being told about his brainwashing quirk. Which segues us into their match. As Izuku steps up to the arena, he already has an alien selected and waiting for it to transform into. With a signal from Midnight, the match starts with Shinzo yelling something out. I can't believe you'd affiliate yourself with such a poor excuse for a hero. What dumbass gives away his spot like that? He exclaims with a grin formed on his face, setting the perfect trap for Izuku, which he does foolishly take. Once transformed into Kudzu, he starts berating Shinzo for talking about Ojiro like that, while sending tendrils at him. But to everyone's surprise, Shinzo fails to trigger the quirk and gets pushed out of bounds by the fibrous appendages. Little known fact about Kudzu's race, they're immune to forms of brainwashing and hypnosis. Obviously, Deku didn't know about this when choosing him, as his game plan was just to push Shinzo out of the bounds straight away. So he just considers it a happy accident. Most matchups from here would consist of a few different people, as Canon Team Bakugo was never formed. Some Class 1B students would take some of their places, but they all have mainly the same outcome, so we won't be touching on them. For example, Todoroki would go against Tetsu Tetsu, just like how Sero was defeated. Tetsu Tetsu would have the same fate. But unlike in the canon fight, Izuku takes notes, and the massive barrage of ice used and rushes to the waiting room. Matches like Bakugo vs Uraraka still have the same outcome, however. But going back to Deku, with his next fight with Todoroki drawing close, his friends start getting concerned as he hasn't come back out of the waiting room, except to console Uraraka on her loss. As their pair starts searching for him, Bakugo tips them off that he's still being in the waiting room. So they begrudgingly drag him along to give Izuku some encouragement and support for his next fight. When the group enters the room, they're met with the strange sight of Izuku in Cortex form, rambling to himself, surrounded by crumpled papers. The three trespassers just stare at the tiny frog creature as he gestures them to leave him, but Bakugo disregards the signal, barging into the room to uncrumple one of the pages. On it are nonchalant ramblings and strange math equations involving two of Izuku's aliens mixed with instructions. But before he could give an answer, Deku times out and falls off the table, losing the knowledge. Thanks again to the Outcasts and Rejects for watching to the end of the video. If this video gets 80 likes in the next 2 weeks, we'll continue this series. Other than that, if you have any questions about the series or channel, sound off in the comments or feel free to join our Discord. Also, if you'd like to talk to me or hear any of my voices, I also do that for free. So feel free to hit me up on Discord. Thanks.